Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. As you know, we try to feature the sung and the unsung heroes of society, people who I feel are really making a difference and making a contribution to our world in many different fields, from psychology, which is my original field, and healing, to the sciences in general, the arts, consciousness, neuroscience, spirituality, politics, economics. It doesn't matter. What really matters is who is the person, is what are they doing to align our values and make a contribution to the greater thinking and understanding of our world, our planet, our universe, and to shift things so that we could all say we're leading a better life and, in general, creating a better world. Well, our guest today, Bruce Lipton, Ph.D., is one of my colleagues and friends for many, many years, and is truly one of those people who I feel is making a significant contribution in helping us open our eyes and understand the nature of physiology and consciousness at the same time, and bringing to bear our understanding, our intelligence into the physical body, and helped us to understand what is the role really of genetics relative to what is our ability to self-create and lead a life of our own making, to form and shape our own destiny. Well, Bruce is an internationally recognized and renowned leader and speaker, as well as writer. He's bridging the domains of science and spirit, which should never have been separated, many of us believe, but were, and Bruce is one of the foremost people bringing them back together under one roof again. With a background in stem cell biology, he's the author of The Biology of Belief and the recipient of the 2009 Goi Peace Award. Oh, so well given. He has been a guest speaker on hundreds of TV and radio shows, as well as a keynote speaker for national and international conferences. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Bruce, you were first on A Better World with me back in, was it 1995, I believe?
It was ancient history, dear friend. I want to tell you, and you were one of the first guys out there that heard that little voice I was trying to raise out there, and you heard it and brought me on, and I've been appreciative ever since, Mitchell.
Oh, you are a gem, indeed, I know. Yeah, back then, Bruce, it's so funny to think about where we are now and then, because you didn't have a book. Very few people really knew about your groundbreaking work, but I'll tell you, back then I used to say, this man deserves a Nobel Prize for Science. How do you like that?
Well,
I'm still saying
might be overstating that quite a lot, but it was kind of fun anyway.
It was fun. It was. It made an impact. And we'll see what the future holds, that's all. From the Goi Peace Award to the Nobel Prize. Who knows? Who knows? Well, frankly, that aside, your work is breakthrough, and that's what's most exciting, and it's really helping us to change our thinking about the nature of our bodies, of the material world, and of reality, quite honestly. What would you like our audience to fundamentally understand, Bruce, about your work?
Well, basically, I guess it is that we've been programmed to believe that we're victims, more or less, victims of viruses, germs, parasites, toxins, all these kind of things, that we're frail and vulnerable human beings. And this turns out to be absolutely false. And it becomes relevant because we're not victims. We're really more or less masters of our fate. And there's a problem. If you believe you're a victim, then you become one.
Interesting.
Hello, are you there? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so basically what I realized is I'm a guy who wasn't spiritual. That's why I got into sciences in the first place. And when I started to understand the nature... I
love the evolution, by the way. I love the evolution. It's beautiful.
Well, it was one of those, like, instantaneous dynamite explosions of consciousness, because I was studying how cells work and leading away from the nucleus, which is the traditional understanding where the genes are and genes control life. That stuff I was teaching medical students at the time.
Yes, University of Wisconsin Medical School, later Stanford.
Later research at Stanford in the medical school, but the teaching conventional biology about genes controlling life. And when you understand science from that point of view, then you recognize that your fate is pretty much determined by these genes. And as far as we know, we didn't pick the genes we came with. We can't change them if we don't like our traits or characters. And all of a sudden, we understand that we're like powerless over these genes that are controlling the unfolding of our lives. And buy into that, and everybody, oh my God, things that run in families become connected to the physical trail of genes. And so we say a trait like cancer, oh, it's genetic. And then you tell a person who believes genes control life that it's genetic, and of course the immediate mindset is, oh my God, I'm susceptible, I can get this cancer.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So the problem about that is we buy into this belief that these genes control us. We give up control over ourselves. We seek others to help us. So, if we're victims, we need rescuers, more or less. So we become victims of our heredity and then find a rescuer. And a rescuer, unfortunately, is actually someone taking advantage of a situation, because we're really more powerful than we have been led to believe. When we understand that, we're not victims. We're creators. And for a guy who wasn't spiritual, to see how cells work and have cells show me, and that's where it came from. How, in understanding how the cell controls its life, I saw that the control was from the outside. And all of a sudden I realized, well, whether it's a cell or 50 trillion cells, the control is always on the outside, and the human body is 50 trillion cells. So the control of the human body, just like a single cell, is not from within but from without. And all of a sudden mixing that with some quantum physics said, oh, my God, there are these invisible forces that quantum physicists call the fields, which shapes the physical reality. And I go, what is a field? Well, it's invisible moving forces that influence physical. And I realized at some point in reading and working with it, it's like, well, my God, that's the same definition of spirit, invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. And so whether you call it the field-controlling cells or spirit, it turns out, well, scientifically you say the field. But, from the world of the knowledge of the ancients, they knew of its action without its mechanism and gave it a name called spirit. And you had to believe in its action because there was no understanding of mechanism. And now, in today's world, we have a mechanism. We call it quantum physics. We all go into the science. We say the invisible forces influence the physical world. And it's like, it's the same story. So we're returning to an emphasis on knowing and understanding that invisible force that we represent, because that's where the power comes from.
Yes, indeed. That was very succinctly put. I'm awed by that.
And for a guy who wasn't spiritual, the first thing I had to own was simply this: the control of my cells is from the outside. Period. What does it mean?
Yes.
That the inside is a response to the outside. So my identity and it was fun because there's a physical mechanism. Of course, I didn't just sit there. The first thing actually that I recognized when my source was from the outside, and this is profound for people. If you can buy it, I bought it was like math, 2 + 2 is 4. When you saw the mechanics and science of how the cell membrane was controlling the cell, you're led to understanding that the control is coming from the outside. Well, the moment I saw that the cell was controlled from the outside, it's like, oh my God, you can't die. Your identity is not even inside you. Each human is different because on the surface of their cells is a unique set of antennas, protein antennas. Each person has a different set of these antennas. No two people are the same. These antennas confer what is called self on cells, meaning this. Mitchell, we take cells out of your body and try to transplant them into another person's body, and the immune system will say, not self. They say, well, where's the self? How does it know whose cells are whose? And the answer is, the set of antennas on the outer surface.
Look at the antennae, silly.
And yet everyone then goes, oh, it's the antennas that make people different. I go, no, you still didn't get it yet. The antennas receive a signal. And the point is, we focus in our physical world on physical things and say, oh, the self is the physical antennas. It's like, no, you failed to understand that. It's like television antennas. These receptors pick up an environmental broadcast that plays through your cells and not through the person next to you. Their cells receive a different broadcast. If you take these self receptors off the cell is generic. It has no identity, and you can transplant it into anybody. But when the self receptors are on, you can't do that. That's why doctors and transplanting organs, you just can't take anybody's kidney and put it in somebody else. You have to match. What are they matching? The sets of antennas on one person's tissue versus the antennas, let's say, on the recipient's tissues. And they're not reading the whole set. They're just reading what are called major ones. And the idea is this. If the donor and the recipient share a good proportion of their set of receptors, then the transplant has a better advantage to it. If there's not really much of a match, the organ will be rejected almost instantly. So they're trying to match receptors. Well, okay, so we're talking about all this mechanical stuff, and people going, okay, these cells have antennas on them in the broadcast. I go, yeah, but here's the point. Each human receives a unique broadcast because their antennas are unique and no one else shares that. The significance is profound for me as I was sitting there when I was understanding the nature of how the membrane worked, looking at these receptors and going, yes, these are receiving of self, and then it hit me and said, oh, my God, I'm not in here. I'm being received as a signal, and it plays through my system, and my 50 trillion cells are all tuned in. They all have the same receptors, so they're responding to me. And here's a guy that all of a sudden, the first thing, it's like, oh, you can't die. You're not even in here. So that was like blew my mind. But you know. But the one that really blew my mind, Mitchell, this is kind of funny because, okay, I'm not spiritual. My whole life I'm not spiritual, 40-some years. I'm sitting there at the desk. I look at the mechanism, and all of a sudden I go, oh, my God, I'm this thing on the outside. I'm this broadcast from the outside. I'm a spirit and I'm a physical body. And then this question hit my mind. I said to myself, why have both a spirit and a physical body? Why not just be a spirit? And then the answer that welled up from my cells. And Mitchell, I apparently have Jewish cells for a simple reason. I asked, why have both a body and a spirit? And the cells responded with another question. And the cells question, what I heard come up from my cells was a simple, I said, why have both a body and a spirit? And the cells said, Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? And all of a sudden I got it. I said, oh, my God, this biological suit made out of 50 trillion cells convert the environment into sensation. Smell, taste, touch, light, sound. All of those are converted by the nervous system into vibrational energy. It's translated from the physical realm to energy, which is then sent back to the source. So I jump into the suit. Now I can feel and smell and and touch and watch sunsets and be in love and all these things. It's like because it's feeding information from this physical world in through a device that translates it to the knowingness of the spiritual world.
It's like a transducer.
It's exactly what it is. And I try to explain to people, I say, well, think about it this way. We can't go to Mars, and we want to know what Mars is all about.
Right.
And we can't get up there, so we send something called a rover. It looks like a little Jeep or something up there.
Yes.
And it's like, I say, yeah, but no matter what it looks like, it represents a human for this reason.
Yes.
All the sensory
it's our
devices.
feelers. What is it's gathering sensory information
that
is an extension of us.
And sending it where? Back to the guy at NASA.
Yeah, right.
And why is that important?
Right.
Because it's a guy at NASA that sends signals up back to the rover to tell it where to go.
Exactly.
And then I thought it, and I said, oh, my God, we're Earthlanders.
Exactly.
We're here. We jump into this suit, and we get to experience life. But not only that, we get to move it around and create with it and manifest with it. And all of a sudden, it's like this big thing hit me. I laughed so loud, and I was alone. I just laughed out loud. And I laughed out loud because I saw it. And
Eureka!
We might have it all backwards. People think when I die, I'm going to heaven. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, when you were born into heaven.
Yes.
Reason why.
Exactly.
This is where we create.
That is a beautiful way of putting it, Bruce. Yes.
Yeah, this is where we create.
Exactly, born into heaven. Yeah.
It's so wonderful. And the issue is this, is that most people out there in the world will say, come on, Bruce, this can't be heaven. Why would anybody create all this war, violence, famine, pestilence? Why would anybody do that? And then I go, yeah, but wait a minute. This is the whole new joke that then dawned on me. The movie The Matrix is listed as science fiction, but in retrospect and looking back on it, I have to tell you, no, it's a documentary. It's a total documentary for this reason.
A non-fiction documentary, right?
we have been programmed.
Yep.
And the life we are creating is the consequence of a program. And it's an invisible thing, but it's the biology belief stuff that we talk about. But the fact is this: we have been programmed, and unconsciously, our 95% of the day are operating from the program and creating this world. Even though we look like, hey, what's going on around here? We don't even see ourselves, doing this involvement, but we are creating it. And what's really fun, Mitchell, this is great.
Yeah.
Because I said, okay, we have this program. The program is creating hell on earth instead of heaven on earth. And then we talked about, well, in Matrix, they said, yeah, you've been programmed. Take the red pill. Get out of the program. Then I'm going to tell you, here's the fun part, because it's the basis of a new book coming out in the spring.
Yes.
It's called The Honeymoon Effect, the science of creating heaven on earth. And it goes like this. I go back to people, and I say, in a group of them, I just look at them and say, look, go back in time to a time in your life where you fell head over heels in love with somebody. I mean, big time, where you were just knocked out in love. And if you get back there, I'm going to, I ask these three questions. I say, go back in that time, and I ask, were you healthy? Almost everybody says inevitably they were just exuberantly healthy.
Right.
It's like, oh, that was
Think
great.
of all that oxytocin, baby.
Yeah, you betcha. And then I say, did you have energy? And they say, oh, my God, they laugh because they made love for days without stopping for food or sleep. You know that,
Right.
And then the third question, I say, okay, was life so beautiful that you couldn't wait for the next day to have more? And the answer was, yeah. And I said, well, it was like creating heaven on earth, wasn't it? Yes, yeah. And then it turns out there's a scientific reason for that. And it was like when you fall in love, it's the equivalent of taking the red pill. When you fall in love, you don't resort to subconscious programming. You actually stay present to Buddhist mindfulness, so to speak.
Yes.
You stay in the present moment, which
beginner's mind.
Every decision you make when you're conscious is a decision based on wishes and desires and aspirations. Every decision made when you're unconscious is made by programming. And it turns out, as the new science reveals, only 5% of the day are we operating from the conscious creative mind, which means only 5% of the time is your life really moving in the direction that you want it to move in. Yeah. 95% of our cognitive activity comes from subconscious programs, and most of those were the programming of childhood. So it's like we're living out the programs our teachers gave us, which are our parents our family, our community, our culture. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I say, so what is the result of not running the program? I said, well, you've experienced it. It was called Heaven on Earth. You were in love. Life was beautiful. You had energy. You were healthy. And it was the same world you were living in. Up to the minute you met that person, your life could have been, oh, what a piece of garbage this life is. Then you meet this person, and boom, now it's Heaven on Earth. And it's like, well, look, the world didn't change. Who changed? It's like, what happened? And the answer was so simple and profound. It said, for the one time in your life, you operated rather than 5%, you operated 95% or more of your conscious activity using your wishes and desires of your conscious mind, and not defaulting to the programs of culture.
To the program. To the subconscious, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm so with you, Bruce. As you know, I've been for 20 years, and I just love the ride.
Well, it's so exciting because we're in a hell of a ride right now. And what is the ride? Well, it's what you're doing. It's what the people on the other end of this line, they're doing. All of us here are doing. What are we doing? We are, and by definition, we are all cultural creatives. And why is that important? I mean, we're creating a new culture. Why? Because the current one is failing, and it's actually dying, and there's a scientific, biological, and real-world reasons for all of this.
Imperative. Oh, yes.
It's going through an evolution.
Yes, indeed.
And the old one's dying, and Einstein, he summed it up best. He said, you can't solve the problems with the same thinking that created the problems.
Yes.
And they said, well, where's the thinking that's creating our problems? The answer is, well, politics, economy, academia, healthcare, religion, all these institutions, which are the foundation of our civilization, have given us cultural beliefs that we have been living by, and science now has revealed the consequence of living the way we're living is that, and this is a dreadful fact, but an important point, is that we are deep into the sixth mass extinction of life on this planet. 5 times. 5 times.
I've heard you reference this. Yes.
Yeah. 5 times in history.
Please expand upon that. That's a very. I would like to circle. I would like to come back to this. Yeah. After having you, it's like you served us this incredibly beautiful gourmet meal, and I would like to go back to part of the appetizer for just a moment.
Well, you know me, I'd like to go 1,000 miles an hour.
I know, but we're going to go in circles for a moment. Okay.
Yes.
But we will come back.
Yes.
It's what? I'm sorry?
Yes, I'm so excited by just being here with you and your audience.
Oh, I thank you, Bruce. That's so mutual. It's so mutual. We definitely need to hang out more. Also in Santa Cruz in New York, let alone on the phone,
Yeah.
But, but there is there's something so beautiful in your going from that agnostic or atheistic state of mind to the breakthrough that made you giddy and full of laughter, sitting in front of your computer and contemplating the sort of like the biological koan of brain and membrane. And I remember you telling me this many years ago, and that you recognized the identity of that and the identity of self as outside, that the cell is being controlled essentially by its environment. And there are so many implications to what that environment/field is. And one of the points that I'd like you to underscore here, but first, is that our emotions and our belief systems inform, advise, and construct that field. So when we, in the world of psychosomatic thinking, of mind-body thinking, say the mind is influencing the body, well, this isn't just talk. This has, and you outlined it, a scientific, physiological basis. This isn't kid stuff. This is the way the system works, man. And then if you look at modern medicine, allopathic medicine, you see a model that is essentially, with all due respect, dinosaur-like, because it does not include this fundamental understanding of the operation of the body. It does not understand. It does not include that.
It has caused a great problem because, as statistics reveal, even the AMA, the American Medical Association itself, recognized they were the third leading cause of death. And then
iatrogenic medicine.
Iatrogenic medicine, which is a clean way of saying illness as a result of medical treatment.
That's right. That's right.
And statistics also bear out the possibility that it's actually the number one cause of death in the United States. So there becomes a logic point. It gets very simple here, Mitchell. You go, let's say this is the health industry, and they're here to help us, be healthy, and they are the third or the first leading cause of death. Maybe there's something wrong with this picture. It's time to stop and just look at it for a second. You're trying to help me, and you're the leading cause of death. Maybe there's a misunderstanding here, which is an understatement.
But let's just say that hospitals are dirty and medications are dangerous and all of that on that level, Bruce. But there's another more fundamental flaw, which is the science on which the entire medical science is predicated is flawed.
Absolutely.
You have helped
the
to
version,
show that.
The simplest version is this.
Yeah.
Number one, conventional science looks at the body and will make an analogy, a vehicle. It is a vehicle, but we'll make an analogy
mechanism.
like a car. Like a car, physical mechanism.
Yes.
They also, because of their focus on the physical character, a Newtonian world, mechanistic in design, then basically what they were looking for, what controls this vehicle? And as they started taking it apart molecule by molecule, they got down to the DNA, and they go, that's it. That's the one where the traits are controlled by this DNA. And they made a few mistakes in assumptions, but what ended up happening was they said, finally, we have an understanding of biology. You're a biochemical machine, and you're controlled by genes. Problem with your body only reflects that there's something wrong with the biochemistry or there's something wrong with the genes. So, so that immediately says what you start to look for and what you adjust. Yes. Unfortunately, what they left out is a more profound understanding. Indeed, to a very large degree, the body is a vehicle like a car. It is.
Yes.
But what they left out was there's a driver in the car, and they never considered the action of the driver on influencing the machinery. And just to give you a simple understanding of that is, I say you go to a junkyard, you see all the cars all piled up. There are all the wrecks and all the junk, and you say, how much of this was due to vehicle failure, or how much of it was due to driver error? And you start to find, 95% of the cars in there are because of the driver, not because of the vehicle.
Driver error.
And when if we apply that there's a driver in a human body, which is we're going to call consciousness, and consciousness is driving the vehicle, then you have to say, we look at in healthcare, and we say how much of ill health is due to vehicle failure, body failure, and how much of it is due to driver failure, consciousness not working in harmony with it. It's exactly the same as the cars in the junkyard. It turns out 90% or more of all organic illness in the human population is actually due to lifestyle and consciousness, and not to genetics, biochemistry, body function. The body is expressing that. So just to give a simple analogy, two identical cars come off the assembly line in Detroit. Make it Germany. They're better. Two cars come off the assembly line. One car goes to a young teenager, a hot rod teenager, and the other one goes to a more mature person. And I say, okay, now follow the fate of these cars. Tell me which one has more repairs, which one ends up in the junkyard first. And the answer is pretty much the kid,
the hot rodder,
destroy it. And it's like, well, wait, they were identical cars when they came off the assembly line. So we have been led to believe, that's the belief, that we are the cars. We come off the assembly line. If we work or not, that's the assembly process and the machine process. And the truth is, no, we are the drivers, and it says simply this: if you have good driver education, your vehicle will last and have a healthy, prosperous, and loving existence. And if you have bad driver education, you'll find yourself in the repair shops and
in trouble.
At the mechanics all the time,
right? Exactly.
And getting parts on prescription.
I so appreciate this because some of the work that I do as a psychotherapist and coach and stress management consultant. I'm working with people's bodies and minds all the time, and the way their mind is influencing through stress and through simple ideation, the way they think.
Absolutely.
The thoughts they think, the words they use to represent reality, their perception. Yeah. That is the base of the understanding, which will then in turn inform their cells. As you quoted Einstein, Einstein was also credited with the wonderful question, is the universe friendly? And, of course, if we see it that it is friendly, that will give one form of nutrition, if you will, metabolic function to our cells. And if we say, no, it's not friendly, and we have to defend ourselves, that sets up an entire other biochemical profile for our cells. So we are determining the health of our cells all the time from that perspective alone.
Absolutely. And, because this comes down to the mind-body duality, so-called, people talk about it that way. And then
that's right.
all the kinds of non-science support of it, but no scientific support of it. And guess what? It is so simple and so scientific that in 3 minutes we can explain it and it's no mystery anymore. Okay, and here's how it works. Here goes the mystery. Mind, body, we're going to clear it up, right? And it goes like this.
Right. Once and for all, folks.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Here's my research, and it was 47 years ago.
And that's remarkable because you're only 52.
I know, but I started young. I was precocious. So basically, 45 years ago, that's even more accurate, 2 years even younger, I was growing stem cells in tissue culture. And a stem cell is an embryonic cell, it's multi-potential cell. And
that was also advanced. That was advanced for you for that year as well, by the way. In itself, young man.
It was so cool because there were only a few of us in the whole world in 1967 that even knew what a stem cell was. So it was kind of an interesting place to be. And
breakthrough.
So these are embryonic cells, and I grow them in a tissue culture dish. And so here's the simple experiment. I put in one cell in a petri dish, one stem cell, and it divides every 10 hours. So first 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. After a week of divisions, I have about 50,000 cells in the petri dish. But number one, they're all genetically identical because they came from the same parent cell. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have 50,000 genetically identical cells. And here's the experiment. I split the cells into 3 different petri dishes. I changed the culture medium. The culture medium is the environment that cells live in, and it has all the things they need, the nutrition and the information for growth and all that stuff that's in there. So that's the world they live in. Think of cells as fish. They live in an aquarium. The aquarium culture medium is what keeps them alive. That's their environment. Point.
Yes.
3 cells, genetically identical, 3 dishes, with genetically identical cells. In one dish, I put an environment, let's say A, with certain chemical composition. In a second dish, I change the environment, so we'll call it environment B. And in the third dish, there's even another change in the environment, and we'll call that environment C. In plate A, the cells form muscle. In plate B, the cells form bone. And in plate C, the cells form fat cells. And it's like, well, that's really neat and interesting. And I go, man, the most profound question in the whole world comes from this, and is what controls the fate of the cells? Well, up to this point in what I was teaching is genes control cells, right? And now in the lab, what are the cells showing me? Well, they're all genetically identical. The fate of the cell wasn't based on the genes. It was based on
it was the environment.
Right. So all of a sudden it's like, that's what led me to look why the cell membrane became the brain of the cell, because the membrane is the interface between the environment on the outside and the environment on the inside. So the membrane is reading both environments and adjusting them to keep life alive. So basically it says as you change the chemical composition of the environment, you change the fate of the cells. That's simple, clear, and that's what happens in a plastic dish. And just to add one simple, more valuable point, I take this dish of healthy cells from a healthy environment, move it into a less than optimal environment, and the cells get sick and they begin to die. And if there were a house call from a cell by a medical doctor who came to my house and looked at my cells and go, Bruce, your cells are sick. We should give them some medicine. And I go, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You want the cells to get well? No medicine. Simple. All you do is take the dish from the bad environment, put it back in the good environment. They instantaneously get healthy again. The point was the fate of the cell is a complement to the environment. That's basically all it is. The cell is adjusting its biology to the environment. So now we're talking about, cells in a plastic dish, and this is really neat, environment controlling cells. And I go, okay, here's the fun connection. And the fun connection is, Mitchell, when you or I look in the mirror, or any of the listeners, we see ourselves looking back, and we say, there's a single entity. There's Mitchell. There's Bruce. There's whoever, a single human being. I go, well, that's a misperception, because we're not like a single organism for a simple reason. We're made out of about 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. The organization and shape of the cells, I give the name Bruce to, but the fact is, Bruce is, by definition, a community of 50 trillion cells. So here's the joke. A human is a skin-covered Petri dish. And inside you got 50 trillion cells. And I say, well, you take your dish from a healthy environment, put it in a bad environment. I say, what happens? It's going to get sick. And I say, how do you make it healthy again? Take it and put it back in a good environment. So I go, wait a minute. So I said, it works exactly the same way. A skin-covered Petri dish with culture medium. I said, well, okay, what's the culture medium? I said, it's blood. The blood's the culture medium. It feeds and nourishes and provides information to the cells. I go, cool. Right. So I say, very simple point. Doesn't make a difference to a cell if it's in a skin dish or a plastic dish in regard to responding to the environment. The answer is no.
Yes.
The cell responds to the cell doesn't care which dish it's in. So I say, okay, so then I say, simple point. Then the chemical composition of the blood, which represents the growth medium, is controlling the behavior and genetics of the cell. I go, absolutely. Same as culture medium. It is culture medium. And then we go one last step. I say, well, the chemistry of the blood changes. I go, yeah, but what controls the chemistry of the blood? I go, the brain. The brain releases the signals and information that control and regulate the composition of the blood. I go, right. And then I go, so quick question. What chemical should my brain release? And the answer is, what's the mind thinking about? and then all of a sudden I say, well, why is that important? I say, okay, brain with person who opens their eyes and they see someone they love, their mind experiences love. I say, what's the consequence of that? As you brought up, oxytocin is released into the blood, dopamine, the pleasure hormone, is released into the blood, vasopressin, a hormone that creates more attractiveness, goes into the blood, growth hormone goes into the blood. And I say, you know what's interesting? I just take the chemicals that came out of the brain when a person felt love. I just take those chemicals, add those special chemicals to my culture dish with plastic dish with cells, causes the cells to grow exuberantly well. That's why when you open your eyes and you see someone you love, you get that feeling of health and wholeness. Why? You're nourishing it with these great chemicals that the brain releases. I say, why did the brain release it? Because the mind perceived love. And I go, okay, just to show the point, the same person opens up their eyes and they see something that scares them. Well, the problem is this: the brain is not, in response to that fear, is not going to release those pleasure chemicals and hormones. It's going to release stress hormones, inflammatory agents, getting the body ready for fight or flight.
Cortisol.
Yeah, and all that goes into the culture medium, the blood, and the culture medium goes to the cells and controls the genetics and the behavior, and all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean trouble with mind-body connection?
That's right. Really?
That's it. That's
you and I think so similarly. Oh, yes. You have been a great teacher to me, but I have also realized some of this, the you could say the biochemical profile of each and every thought. And when you really break, and the work of Candace Pert, the molecules of emotion, have also been very helpful in helping our collective understanding of this reality, Both of you have made major contributions in this regard.
That it's your perception that creates the culture medium composition.
Yes.
And the composition of the culture medium determines the fate of the cells.
Yes.
Then it comes down to a simple point. It says, well, how do you control your life? And the answer is control your perceptions. Because it's your perceptions. I said that's exactly what happened when you fell in love. When your perception switched to love, your world switched from wherever it was to heaven on earth. It's like,
exactly. And so that answers the question: how to create heaven on earth. Wherever you look, see love. Have the experience of love.
Right. If you're the person that looks for what's wrong with something, you could walk through the Garden of Eden and there might be like a gum wrapper there. Like the entire Garden of Eden is one lousy gum wrapper. But if that's what you look for, you will find it. Here's an interesting thought. How does our mind ultimately lead us to where our thoughts want us to go? How does it create and this is fun because most people have experienced this. That's why I like to tell this one, because it's like, I've done that. It goes like this. You sit down, you pop open a newspaper, and before you even read anything, something catches your attention. And it's like over here somewhere, and you start looking around. There was something over here, and then something pops out, like the name of the town you were born in or the field that you're specialized in or something. Have you ever experienced anything like that? And I go, okay, now here's the fun part. How did that happen, and why did it happen? It was like a slowdown in a process that revealed the process. It's so fast normally you don't see it, but it's a slowdown. And here's what happens. The moment you pop open the pages, big full-size newspaper, right? The subconscious mind, this is how fast it is, and people, it's hard for them to understand it. The subconscious mind read every word on the page, number one. It just read every word on the page.
Oh,
but what it does is it has a database of things associated with you that are personal. Your name, the town you were born in, a street name, your mother's name, things that are very personal.
Personal signature, so to speak.
Right. And as the scan goes over that page, like how fast did it read it? Well, how fast did it take you to open the paper? That's how fast it took to read it, okay? I say, and what did it do? It scanned all the words on the page. What did it find? Oh, a word that is connected to you. What is its job? Its job as a subconscious mind processor scanner system was to awaken your consciousness to that there's something here relevant to you.
Yes.
The speed difference is, here's where the speed difference is. It only took the subconscious mind the time it took you to open the paper to read all the words on both sides of the paper. But the conscious mind, how long did it take you to find the word? And the issue, the conscious mind is very slow.
Yes.
It's being prodded by the subconscious mind, which has programs and habits into it. So things that can, that show up in your field of vision, your subconscious mind will attract you to them if they're, or repel you based on whatever your program is about those stimuli. And all of a sudden you start to realize, oh my God, the subconscious mind acts so fast, and then it gives like urges the conscious mind, come on, pay attention.
Get on with it, man.
And sometimes I find myself like staring at something. I guess my mind was traveling somewhere, and I was staring at something. Why am I looking at this? All of a sudden I realized that my subconscious mind brought me over here for some point, and my conscious mind was off in space, and I'm standing there looking at something until my consciousness had to say, "What are you looking for?"
Right.
So,
but there's like a magnetic connectedness between the subconscious and the so-called outside world, and then the conscious mind eventually gets the message and gets onto the ride, the vibrational ride, the frequency ride that the subconscious had already established.
Yeah, the subconscious is like 1 million times more powerful processor, information processor than the conscious mind. So, that's why if you're driving the car and the car is going into an accident of some kind, the neurosecretions from the brain actually shut off the conscious mind. And then you respond unconsciously, and the significance is because it's 1 million times faster than I leave this. You're holding on the steering wheel, and the car is spinning out of control, and all you're going is, oh, you're like, no, let go of that. The subconscious mind just kicks in automatically.
Exactly, and that's the same thing as when we fall or anything of that sort. The signal doesn't even get to our head brain. It just goes straight to our spinal cord and back to the organ or the limb, I should say, that needs to move out of harm's way.
That's the basic behavior of all organisms is called reflex behavior. Stimulus response. Yes. But when you add consciousness, it goes between the stimulus and the response. And all of a sudden, it goes between it. It slows down the time between the stimulus and the response, but it gives a greater opportunity of many different kinds of responses to that same stimulus. So you put the consciousness between the stimulus and the response. Except the profoundly important ones, which are at a lower brain level, are controlled by the subconscious. So you
yes,
feel,
which is
feel things
sort of the brain stem.
Yeah.
Reptilian functions.
Very basic stuff.
Exactly. I think there are some politicians, Bruce, that are still operating on that level.
Oh my God, yeah. There's a simple reason for that, and people. Okay, this takes us on a little track. But this track answers that question, Well,
yes, I want to hear
it. And
it.
it has to deal with the fact that it's been established that up to 90%.
The physiology. We're going to get into the fractal physiology of the political mind.
Well, basically, it says up to 90% of doctor visits are directly related to stress. Okay, yes. Number one. Okay, stress is specifically distress. It is related to the activity of what is called the HPA axis, which is the part of the brain, the hypothalamus. The H is hypothalamus, the P is pituitary, A is adrenal. And what it really represents is this: is that information from the environment is picked up by the hypothalamus. It's interpreted, just as we said, love or fear, whatever it is. It turns out to be fear.
Yes, it's the perceptual apparatus. Yeah.
Yep, and the fear one will then send a signal to pituitary, master gland, to alert 50 trillion cells that are like, they're like in the submarine called the body. They're all in there operating all the mechanisms. They have to respond to the information from the outside, and the brain is the interface between the two. Yes. Which then leads to the biggest of problems, and the biggest of problems is this: the cells don't actually know what's going on outside. They only respond to what the brain's saying going on outside. Mm-hmm. If the brain has a misinterpretation of what it sees, then by definition it will send incorrect chemistry to the cells, and that's where stresses come from a lot. Because it's like, well, it's the wrong chemistry playing at a time when something else should be going on because you sent the wrong signal. So that's where life is affected by our thoughts, because when our thoughts are actual and real, then we're controlling ourselves. The cells, the 50 trillion cells, are getting correct information about their world and will respond appropriately. If we distort the information, then the information sent to the cells is distorted. They don't know the real world from the distorted world. They're just getting the signal. So a cell only believes what the brain tells it, and that means
it's so interesting. It's a manual. It's really a manual function that we think everything is automatic. Things are automatic after they've received the instruction. After they've received, I should say more accurately, the perception.
So this is what happens with the stress response causes the pituitary to alert 50 trillion cells there's something going on, and it requires the adrenal gland, because that's fight or flight, responding to an outside thing. Well, how does illness result from this, and why is politics connected to it? And it goes like this. Number one, there's three consequences of the stress response. Number one is when stress hormones are released into the system. The phrase is interesting. It's out of a book, but it's profound when you stop it. The phrase is, the blood is preferentially sent to the arms and legs when the stress hormones are released. And I go, well, that makes sense.
Yes.
The blood has nourishment.
Because it will allow for locomotion. Yeah.
The word preferentially gets changed. It's like preferentially sent to the arms and legs. Where was it before it was sent to the arms and legs? The answer was, it was in the gut, which is all the body maintenance mechanisms, taking care of oxygenation,
digestion,
food, cleaning, filtering, everything, taking care of it. The growth mechanism. What's the importance of this? The moment you're under stress, you shut off the growth mechanisms because the blood vessels in the gut close down, forcing the blood to go to the arms and legs. So now you got rich nutrition, in your arms and legs, so you can fight or flight, no problem, okay? But the consequence of what? Well, when you're under stress, the blood vessels in the gut shut down, and you stop maintaining the body as well. So, and you say, why is that important? And I say, well, we replace hundreds of billions, so Carl Sagan, billions and billions of cells, hundreds of them, every day are dying from just old age, trauma, physical abuse, whatever. We're losing these cells, hundreds and hundreds of billions of cells every day. Where do you get the new ones from? And the answer is we grow with our stem cells every day. So even though you're an adult, you have to grow every day. If you interfere with growth for any period of time, then you bring the system starts to fall apart. Okay, so the first thing of stress, number one, is it shuts down the growth, it shunts the blood to the periphery for fight or flight. Number two, very interesting, to conserve energy to run away from that lion, the stress hormones also shut off the immune system, which is an internal protection mechanism. And the immune system uses a lot of energy, as you well know, because if you get very sick, guess what? You have no energy to get out of bed. So the immune system uses a lot of energy. So when you're being chased by the lion, the stress hormones shut off the immune system. As a matter of fact, they use that therapeutically when a patient receives like a heart or a lung or kidney from somebody, and they don't want the immune system to, aggressively attack the new graft. They give the patient stress hormones, which automatically shuts down their immune system.
Shut it down.
So I say, okay,
that will allow for a more graceful acceptance of the new organ.
Oh, absolutely. And so you can regulate it therapeutically with stress hormones, but that's not what we're intending to do, because in your own body, I say, well, what's the consequence of stress hormones? Well, number one, it shut off the growth and maintenance of the body, which you need to have every day. Number two, it shuts off your immune system that protects you from your health. That's why stress causes illness, right? Boom, right there, simple point. But the third one, where the politics comes into it, is an interesting one, and that is this. In a stress response, do you think you use conscious processing or hindbrain reactive behavior?
Hindbrain reactive behavior.
Okay, so here's how it works. The same stress hormones that squeeze the blood vessels in the gut and shut them down, forcing the blood to the periphery, the same stress hormones in the brain cause the blood vessels in the prefrontal cortex, where the conscious mind is operating from, squeezes them shut. Forcing the blood to the hindbrain, because that's where you're going to operate from that hyper-reactive state. So what's the point? The point is, if you get somebody to be afraid, you have them live in fear, then they become less intelligent, because in their response, it's not coming from consciousness now, it's coming from reactive behavior. So politicians knowingly create the fear. The media creates the fear. Everybody who wants to regulate us creates the fear. Why? We're shut down. We're less intelligent. We're sicker.
We lose our intelligence.
And then
it's prefrontal constriction.
Look at what happened in the United States. And it's very interesting, because post 9/11 especially, we have become the sickest nation and, unfortunately, one of the least intelligent nations on this planet. And I say least intelligent for just from a survey from Science, for example. Science listed the 43 biggest countries on the planet, and they did a survey of what percent of the population believes in evolution versus those that don't, right? The United States came, out of 43, the United States was number 42. Only Turkey had fewer believers in evolution than the United States had. We were, the 46% of the population doesn't believe in evolution.
Oh, my God.
So, and it's like educational systems are breaking down because it's falling apart. And so we as a group are less intelligent, and we're sicker. And you say, why? Because they've had us live in fear ever since 9/11. As a matter of fact, what was interesting, remember how I said the fear response shuts down the growth? It doesn't make a difference if it's 50 trillion cells in your body or 300 million Americans in a country, because people are like cells.
It's a series of different levels of colonies.
It's a fractal image of each other. They do exactly. They have the same needs and drives. So the whole idea was this: we had 3 days after 9/11. Bush was on the television every day. Be afraid, they're coming. Be afraid. We don't know where they are. They're coming to get you and your kids. And everybody lived in fear.
The mushroom cloud also later, right?
And then I said, well, what happened? About 3 days after continuously doing this, guess what his message was on the fourth day? Okay, we're in a lot of fear, but America is open to business. Remember him saying that? America is open to business. It's like, what? And why did he say that?
I don't.
Because, it was so fantastic, because the fear shut down the economy. Everyone was in fear. The economy stopped. Why? Growth shut down. Protection was number one. And then he had to actually say that. I mean, I was in shock because I'm teaching this about HPA and stuff like that. You know,
Right.
It's like, it's just like growth and protection. You can't do them both at the same time. And so the more protection we get into, the less growth the country is. Well, that was such a shock that the growth absolutely stopped, and he had to encourage business to open. People go out, go shopping, do something, grow.
Right, exactly.
You know, and yet what happened was this. 5 years in a row after 9/11, the pharmaceutical companies made 20% more profit per year than the preceding year. And 5 years in a row after 9/11, they were making 100% more profit from the fear that resulted in the illness and the stress that crippled the people, and they kept them in fear, and they keep us in fear all the time. It's like that's why this country is is an economic catastrophe just with the healthcare system. As it turns out, only 5% of people's ill health, for example, can really be directly attributed to genes and biochemistry, and less than 10% of health issues have any heredity basis at all. 90% or more of all illness on this planet is the way we're living, and the biggest problem we're facing right now is this: the loss of growth and harmony as a result of the increase in fear, and it's crippling us. And it's actually reverberating, as you talked about, because this is your work, Mitchell. The fear on the outside reverberates as the vibration of the fear on the inside, and our physiology inside and our life outside match one another. Just as I said, take the plate from a good environment, put it in a bad environment. Well, we're in a bad environment.
That's right. That's right. And we are either creating a good one or a bad one ourselves with the way we think, which is based on the way we perceive. And that is, what assumptions do we make about the nature of reality? Is it something to fear, or is it a friendly place? You know,
and that's your program. That's your program. You look outside through those filters.
Every single time I say a better world, I am asserting that notion into people's brains.
And it has to be habituated in, because that's how we got the programs in the first place, habits. So it's to rehabituate our own thinking. And the fact is, the new book, The Honeymoon Effect, is why it's so important for me to emphasize is this. I talk about, and we talk about, how our consciousness and thoughts are creating the world. And for most people, that's an alien thought. And then I say, but when you fell in love, that experience, whether it lasted 3 days, a week, if you're lucky, months or a year, that honeymoon experience, own this simple reality. That was not a coincidence. That was not an accident. That was a personal creation. You absolutely did it. So that means you can go back in your life and say, there was a time where I did create heaven on earth. If you've experienced love like that. And it doesn't actually have to be with a person. It could be with something you do, like an artist creating something, or someone, whose job, and they manifest something with love. That same love is the same, that's the same chemicals on the inside. So,
I would actually even go a step further, Bruce, and say there doesn't even necessarily have to be an external reason as such, that our own internal neurochemical factory, is designed toward harmony, which already releases endorphins and brings us into, what do all the ancient traditions talk about but bliss and happiness and joy? And they do it because when you're resting, you're at a state of rest. I believe that these chemical reactions and enzymatic activity rise to the occasion, and we become so-called happy for unconditionally.
Oh, absolutely. Once what happened for me personally, so I can talk about that one easily, and that was simply this.
At that moment,
owned that what I'm experiencing is my creation. I owned that I was programmed. I owned that if I pay attention, I could override the program, and that by habitually doing so, I can actually rewrite the program. So guess what? My chemical basis here comes from the first thought. I'm in heaven. And the lack of fear, which that was the really major thing at the moment of recognizing my identity was not in the body, was the fear of mortality, which, remember, as kids, when we first grasp the idea of, oh my God, we die, our parents die, we die. It was like horrible. And ever since then, unconsciously, without you even seeing it, like a shadow behind you, that fear is involved with every decision you make on this planet, because every decision has to be run by that fear monitor to say, how's this going to affect my mortality? And we don't realize how much of this is so overweighing to us that when I saw, and I owned it for myself, that I didn't see. You don't die. You just, you lose the body, which is fun because when you understand the nature of the self receptors we talked about, I say, well, yeah, so this body dies, and I say, then what? I say, well, another body in the future shows up with the same set of antennas on it. We're back. You're back, but it's a different vehicle. It could be male or female or black.
It's a different vehicle, but are you suggesting that, I mean, I got to say, Bruce, let's let everybody know. I am speaking with Dr. Bruce Lipton, the author of The Biology of Belief, cellular biologist, internationally renowned speaker and teacher. And this is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Visit us at our website also at www.abetterworld.tv. And we are just getting going here. And it's pretty awesome, Bruce, as usual, in our conversations,
It's kind of fun because there's an evolution coming. What's the evolution? Well, we already talked about it.
There's an evolution, but I'm going to even say this. There is you could even say the theology of Bruce Lipton. I mean, I say it playfully, but I also mean it, because you give a scientific basis for immortality.
Well, as I said, that was for me very personal because I was up until the moment of understanding that membrane stuff. And again, this is very important. I wasn't spiritual.
It's personal, but it's also, you've set up an analogy, a homologue and a fractal relationship between, right?
Well, that
would you expand on that? Because
changes the little key that changes everything, because it's the key that when you plug it in the hole, everything got in register, everything lined up, and the pattern was like, oh my God, this is we're in a pattern here. And if you understand the pattern, then all of a sudden the future isn't blind at all. We're playing out patterns in a fractal universe where patterns repeat themselves over again at any different level. So that's why if you understand the nature of a cell, and this is very important for listeners to get this, is that we say those little cells in us. I say, well, what are these little cells? I say, they're miniature people in this regard.
Yeah.
Every function that you have in your body, from respiration, digestion, excretion, muscle, skeletal system, reproductive system, even immune system.
Sure.
These systems are there in their more primitive form in virtually every cell in your body. The point is this. Mm-hmm. By definition, a cell is a miniature person. It has all the functions that you have. It has the same drives as you have. Why? Well, since you're made out of cells and everything you need to do is to maintain the cells, then the needs of the cells are your needs, and all of a sudden, cells and humans have the same needs and drives. They operate in the same way.
It's a micro-macro relationship.
Absolutely, and the fun part about it is that humans have so much hubris, is that we think, oh, we're so smart, and everything less than us is less smart than us, and then you get down to the cells and you go, how can cells be smart? And then I just have to laugh because I have to say, listen, 50 trillion cells created us. They created us with technologies that human scientists can't even come up with today. There's a technology system. There's a community of intelligent 50 trillion cells, and we are them. So it would be nice to talk to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that people and cells have these same drives, and it's really neat because if you understand the pattern of cells and what they did in their evolution, and then you apply that to human civilization, which is evolving, then you see those fractal patterns tell us that we are on the edge of something that's so exciting, it's unbelievable, and it's not in our conventional science because they haven't connected with the patterns exactly yet.
Yes. What are you referring to?
Well, let's say, for example, this is, civilization is a living organism right now comprised of about 8 billion cells called humans, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's a multicellular organism. This is what we're beginning to learn in our evolution, that all people are cells in the same body of a superorganism called humanity. And that's what people, this is the evolution, owning the reality, oh my God, we're all cells in the same system. That fighting each other is the same as as autoimmune disease, self-destruction. This is what we're experiencing right now, that the cells have to learn that there's a harmony and a unity. Well, that learning has been, pushed into our reality at this moment through the Internet. Why the Internet? Because it said you might be 8 billion individual cells, but everybody can be connected on the same Internet. And that's sort of like why 50 trillion cells all have the same set of antennas. They're all sharing this. They're all on the same broadcast. They're all reading the same. Well, we are going to recognize that the human organism is called humanity, and we are cells in that body. And if we work in harmony, imagine, look, I got 50 trillion cells in my body. When I'm in health and I am happy and I am having a good time, by definition, 50 trillion cells are experiencing everything I am as well.
Right.
And so basically we have to understand this is that if human civilization recognizes its unity, that it's held together by a nervous system, which is called the Internet, which is, saying, look, I don't care where you are in this world, we're all part of one. And we start working in that harmony. That is our evolutionary destiny, which is not a change in the human biology, because there's been a mistake in understanding the nature of pattern in evolution. And our conventional world just sees evolution as one continuous unfolding of more and more and more complicated organisms as you go from the lowest organisms on the planet to the highest organisms. One continuous unfolding. And it turns out they missed the pattern. And there's a pattern to it, because it's the pattern that says where we are today, and it's like, oh my God, we're at this critical juncture that's the most exciting. And here's the pattern.
Yes.
The life forms that came on this planet were bacteria. The membranes of the bacteria are part of their nervous system and their awareness and abilities and all that. Bacteria have a limited size. They're very small. Matter of fact, their shapes, many of them are like little round pills or little capsules. And they're very tiny with a very small amount of membrane. And I'm saying, but the membrane is intelligence. And I say, well, how do you get more intelligence? You get more membrane. And then you realize bacteria reach a certain size. They're in these capsules. They can't get smarter. And so then you say, well, then evolution stopped. That bacteria started. They evolved. Their membrane became more evolved, more intelligent, but they reached the finite size because there was only so much membrane. You couldn't make it bigger. It lived in a capsule. What happened is, the bacteria started to live in community. And when they started to live in community, then they started to partition out the workloads. So not everybody did the same thing, but they could all share. And what it basically did... So
you're saying specialization occurred.
Yeah, and integration. Okay? And so and they put a membrane around themselves, and they're called biofilms. They're like little bags of bacteria, but they're not all the same. They're different.
Yes.
Some of them do one kind of function, some do another. But in the
they're
bag,
differentiating.
And they became the organelles of a new organism called the amoeba.
Aha.
So an amoeba is the final integrated state of a bunch of bacteria that shared their workloads, came together in a community. So it goes single organism, community of organism, and then the new organism, which is the higher evolution. So I say first round, bacteria, bacteria films, the amoeba. Okay, what is the amoeba? New organism. So what happened the next phase of evolution? All these single-cell organisms started evolving, all different kinds of them. Each one derived from a community of more primitive organisms. So a community but a new organism. And I say, well, what did they do? I say, well, the amoebas got together, and they created what? All the different animals on this planet are derived from communities of amoebas. Each animal is a community. We call it a single entity. It's like, no, it's an integrated community of the cells, which are integrated communities of the bacteria. So each human is an integrated community of 50 trillion cells, but itself a new organism. And what does it do? Repeat the same pattern First it starts out as individuals, then they come together and learn how to form a community, then the communities learn differentiation, and then they express their multicellular thing. So where are we? Well, we came out of the woods a long time ago, so, we started as single organisms, then there were tribes, and then nations and states and all this stuff, building up what? To what is the evolution? It's not the evolution of the human at this point. It's the evolution of the integrated community of humans.
Mm-hmm.
And that is called humanity. So what's happening? You look at the world and you say, the political structures that have held people separate from each other and repressed people for a long time, with the advent of the Internet, lost their footing because people started to look around and other people in the world going, geez, look what they got. Look what we got. It doesn't work.
Right.
The Arab Spring is part of that unfolding, All
sure.
of this is driven to do what? Break down the structure. Why? This is so exciting because this is leading to a new evolution, and it's associated with a generational upheaval. We leave behind the baby boomers, and we enter into the age of what are called the millennials, and those are people under 40. I say, what's unique about them? They're the ones that are disconnected from the current structure. And you say, what do you mean? I say, well, they're the ones that can't even get the jobs. They're the ones that have education. They can't pay the bills. They got to live together.
They can't even plug into the status quo, in other words.
Yeah, they can't get into it. So why is that important? Because the structure of a civilization is based on how many people are holding on to the structure. Right. And then you look around and I say, 50% of the people, they don't care if the structure falls. You talk to a typical young millennial and you say, hey, I hear the stock market's going to crash tomorrow. And they'll look at you and go, hey, so like I own a stock, like I care, And why is that important? Because it says 50% of the population is already disconnecting from the primary structure. Meaning at the primary structure. Unplugging.
Right.
Moving into another creation.
Or was never plugged in the first place.
Yeah, that's why, and so and it's funny because most of them are going, whoa, with me, my life sucks, I got this education, I can't get a job, everything. They don't realize that their disconnecting from the structure is fundamental for the old structure falling and the creation of the new structure coming.
Exactly.
They're in the transition moment right here. And there's new careers and new technologies and industries that are being developed as we're talking on the phone right now that will change the future. And so we're in a state of transition. Transition from what? The previous form of civilization, which is like Darwinian, which said it's based on the individual, survival of the fittest. It's like, screw the community. If you the last one standing, you win. Whatever it takes.
Rugged individualism, which was considered the basis of this country.
Yeah, but it's totally destructive because
I agree.
Nature doesn't care about individuals.
Right. It cares about species.
I joke. Yeah, exactly. That's why I say, look, if we had to go to court to defend what we did to the Garden of Eden here, that we destroyed it, right? and we offer in our defense, we say, yeah, but I know we destroyed it, but look, we got Beethoven, we got Einstein, we got these great individuals, and nature goes, who cares? You guys destroyed the garden. Who cares? The individuals that made it through in that. Nature wants to know what human civilization is doing, and it's challenging us right now because we're going through that sixth mass extinction, and that's because the way we've been living is destructive of the environment and of ourselves. So the evolution that's in front of us right now is changing the way we live with each other and the world around us. Well, that's what millennials are doing, and they're pulled out, and that's why they got to see that there's a very hopeful thing of what's going on, and that the old institutions are falling, which scares a lot of people. This is what I really want people to get. Yeah, the old institutions are the ones that have, passed on the beliefs that now are self-destructive. If they don't fail, we're in more problem than anybody could ever imagine because extinction is looming very, very fast. And so the fall of the structure, it should be, welcomed and appreciated.
Celebrated. It's the best thing that could happen, you're saying, and I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Absolutely, but I want it's your message and my message, but the audience really has to go out there and recognize is that this is going on, and you have two choices: growth or protection. And the media is throwing you into protection, which is doing what? It's making you sick. It's shutting up your immune system. It's making you less intelligent. You got to get out of that system.
Fear. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
And that's why what I'm doing and what a number of people in independent media, Bruce, alternative media are doing. We may be broke. However, we are forging a new consciousness by promoting a fear-free zone, in the field, in the planetary field.
As you just emphasized, Mitchell, the nature of this evolution is community, which is interesting because in a Darwinian world, we result in the world that we have now where communities are completely broken down, not just the outside the family community, the nuclear family, which is the primal community, those are broken down. And as a result, there's power by a few over masses because it's community where power comes from. If you break up the community, then each individual has no collective power at all. And when communities form, they can shape the world that they live in. They can change everything. They can change just the environment by the way they live in the environment.
Exactly. There's power in numbers. We all know that. But, if we were to take, I totally appreciate everything that you're saying and implying, and it is a theme on A Better World by all means, and this is complemented by another one of my favorite sciences, which is astrology, which shows that we are now in a period of time called Pluto into Capricorn. And what that means is Capricorn stands for the structures, the institutions of our society. And wherever there is a level of disintegration, which of course means disintegrity, which means the structure, forget the morality, just the structure can't hold its own self up because of dissolving, dissolute energies. For instance, look at the Catholic Church. Look at the United States and many other governments. And, as you mentioned, the Arab Spring. They're dissolving under their own weight, which is exactly what nature is calling for in order for the new to be built. So,
Absolutely.
Right?
And all the listeners out here have to recognize that they're part of that cultural creation of a new thinking with a new reality. And just to bring that up, the wonderful, for me, the results of the election were very wonderful in this regard. All the money that I thought was going to destroy the electoral process in this country because of all the, the corporate money that they were going to throw in the election.
The super PACs and all.
All that super PAC stuff came to no avail, which meant what? For the first time, people stopped listening to that story and said, I don't care. You can throw all the money in the story, but I'm not listening.
Money did not dominate the conversation.
Right, and that's a sign
the outcome. Yeah.
The consciousness is changing. That's to me, that was like, oh, my God, that it is so wonderful because it really represents people are beginning to stop buying the story they've been told.
Exactly.
And that's our evolution right there in a nutshell. So it's happening right now. Right now.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I think it should also be said that you are you have taken the notion of evolution as was originally cast by Darwin and have brought forward really another interpretation of it that has a lot more to do with adaptation and cooperation, which neuroscience is very much supporting. I've had Lynn McTaggart on, by the way, a few times.
She's great.
And I love her. And, that aggregation of data that shows that she outlines in the bond, for instance, is that we are a community of beings on all levels, as you so well put, and that it is our nature to bond, it is our nature to belong, it is our nature to agree, it is our nature to cooperate. That's the way we survive. For all of those cells and organelles and organs and tissue and muscle and bone to cooperate into the formation of a human being, which is that 50 trillion cells that we refer to as Bruce and Mitchell. And then when we join arms and join hands together, we become the body of humanity. So my question to you is, Bruce, where are we going from here? What is our collective next with, what you were saying about the internet? What is our next evolutionary moment? And what do you think that looks like?
Well, this is the exciting part. There's a story, and I could give a little bit of this wonderful unfolding because it tells you where we're going. And
yes.
I said that the patterns in nature are repetitive because they're fractal. And for those that don't know about fractals, it's a geometry, which is how you put physical structure into space. So when you're talking about nature, by definition, nature's physical structure in an environment, and geometry is what creates it. And the geometry we learned in school doesn't create nature. Sort of like in kindergarten, you probably made a Christmas tree, a triangle with a stick on the bottom, and
right.
Or another tree with a ball on the top. That's not nature. Nature uses a different geometry that is called fractal. But what's so important about fractal is that the old ancient saying, "As above, so below." It's an actual scientific integral element of fractal geometry, meaning by absolute definition, nature being built on a fractal geometry will have repetitive structure at any level of the organization. That means that the patterns are self-similar, almost identical. And then I say, we've been talking about a couple of them right now. I've been talking about the fact that you can talk about a cell and you can talk about a human. They both have the same functions. They both have the same needs. They both have the same drives. It's like, they're images of each other, but one's at a microscopic level and the other's at a macroscopic level. So it says that if you see a pattern, it will repeat itself. And so here's an interesting pattern of think of human civilization as an evolving multicellular organism where each person is a cell, and we're trying to evolve as a community. It would then, by definition, play the pattern of evolution that animals had, because it's an animal organism. We're not plants. We're an animal. And so I say, okay, let's just think of the pattern that we learned in school of vertebrates, which were fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. And I go, okay, the first and earliest cultures of human civilization were mariculture, fish. They had to live in the water because they couldn't take the water on land with them. So only civilization can only be based where water was. Just like fish, they couldn't move away from the water. And they went across the seas and populated the coasts, and that's the early phase. The next phase of vertebrate evolution, we went from fish to amphibians. Well, amphibians took the water from the pond with them onto land, so they didn't have to be stuck at the pond anymore. Well, that was the next era of human civilization, which is associated with agriculture. When we evolved agricultural technologies where we could get water to a place or find water or somehow or other grow stuff and have water with us wherever we wanted, then we moved away from the seas and penetrated into the land and started farming and living not on the edges but deep in. So that agriculture is like the amphibian phase. The next phase is reptiles. And reptiles are very interesting because, number one, they're like machines. They're almost digital the way they move. They were built for land, unlike amphibians, which were really built for the sea and coming on the land. Reptiles were the next level up. These were the machines, and they even talk about dinosaurs, like killing machines and stuff like that. They're very digital, the way they blink and click and stuff like that.
And cold-blooded, non-mammalian.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a mechanism. Per se.
Yes,
and it's interesting because they started out as these small lizards, and what was interesting is they were so effective that nature could take the blueprint of a 5-inch lizard, use the same blueprint, just blow it up and say 50-foot lizard. Same blueprint. They have the same. Everything's proportionally just bigger. Yep. But here's what happened to dinosaurs. The bodies got bigger. And here's what. Let's put it this way. Let's take a look at a little 5-inch lizard, and the hind leg does a little movement. This little movement of the hind leg. And I say, it takes 10 muscles to make that movement, and 1 nerve to fire those 10 muscles. And I say, okay, now we blow up the 5-inch lizard. It's a 50-foot dinosaur. Well, the leg does exactly the same movement, but instead of 10 muscles, it's so big it has 10 million muscles. And I go, and how many nerves does it have? And the answer is 1. It's like, the body grew bigger, but the brain stayed very small. And the reason was this: It was just playing the same machine out all the time.
Yeah.
But and so as the dinosaur grew bigger and bigger, it was more powerful. Except for this, the brain was too small to adapt to changes in the environment. It couldn't handle that massive body. If the environment changed radically, the brain couldn't handle it. So a radical change in environment led to ultimately the fall of the dinosaurs, okay? The reptiles, I say, well, what phase of human civilization is reptiles? And the answer is industrial age. We went from mariculture, agriculture, industrial age, the machine age. I go, well, you know what's interesting about that? The machine age runs on what? Oil. The blood of the dinosaurs. So character is playing right into the system, okay? So we're playing this machine-like mechanism. It started out, industrial age, as small mom-and-pop shops where they did little industry, guilds and things. Yes. And then they grew into General Motors and stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
Those are the dinosaurs.
That's the dinosaur.
They just
which
took
is
the
about
mom
to
and
die.
Pop and blew it up, but their intelligence isn't that big, so that's why they fail, But the problem is this. If the environment changes, these big corporate dinosaurs don't have the ability to change quickly enough with the environment.
And to adapt, right?
And adapt, and that's why corporations are in a state of crumbling to a certain degree. Okay?
That's correct.
And I said, yeah, but what came from the industrial age? I said, well, what came from reptiles? I said, birds. I go, oh, birds. I said, yeah. Did human civilization go through the bird phase? I said, absolutely. 1903, the industrial age gave rise to the mechanism of Wilbur Norval Wright's airplane.
Yes.
And then we entered the aviation age. The aviation age is what? Well, it started out, the world was so big before airplanes you couldn't imagine it. Right. Now it's so small you could go around it every 90 minutes in a space capsule, It's like, okay, and it changed our whole perception, changed our whole thing of the world because it connected it. Birds have perspective. They're above things and look down on it, so they see stuff, The
eagle's view, the purview,
Right, and so the aviation age was the age of the birds. So we go back. Fish, mariculture, amphibians, agriculture, reptiles, industrial age, aviation is the bird phase, and then I say next is mammals. I say, when did the mammal phase? I say, when did the mammal phase come? And here's the fun part. When the birds reached their fullest evolution, they landed on the moon. And what did they do? They shot a picture of the Earth.
And everybody's heart opened.
Absolutely. We had the first Earth Day within weeks after the picture got back to the planet. Exactly. And I say, well, here's the fun part. Listen, this is the fun part. The Earth Day caused the so-called hippies, right, to look at the planet in a different way as a living system. And they started to look at it and say, we better take care of the water, and we better take care of the air, we have to take care of the children, and we have to take care of this. And I say, why is that important? Because here's the joke. Taking care is the definition of nurturing.
Yeah.
Nurturing is the character of mammals.
Of the mammal. Yep.
So the mammal generation were seeded in 1969. But then we go back over the evolution pattern. I said, what happened? I said, well, the dinosaurs were here and gave rise to the birds, and the mammals evolved while the dinosaurs were still here. The mammals were those little soft, furry things that the Tyrannosaurus Rex ate. Ate those things, right? And so it's like, okay, so there was a period then where dinosaurs, aviation, and mammals were all here. Well, that's now. The significance is this. The environment is changing very rapidly, so rapidly that we got to do something right now. And here's the point. Indeed. The corporations are not going to make it through the old ones the way they've been running, that are not global in their vision, okay?
Right.
They're running out of fuel. The blood of the system is dying.
That's right.
There's not enough to keep this thing
going. They're running out of the fossil fuel.
Right, and the dinosaurs are going to crash. The corporations are going to crash. And I say, well, what happens when the dinosaurs crash in evolution? It's like the meek took over the earth. I say, who are the meek? They're the mammals. And I say, who are the mammals? Anybody listening on this phone call? and why is that so relevant? Is because there's a falling behind of the old and the evolution of this new. It was seeded in 1969. But as I said, when mammals were evolving, they evolved in the presence of the dinosaurs. And so, but they only came to power when the dinosaurs crashed. and we are at this moment of seeing the dinosaurs start to change right away because the corporate entities that paid for what they thought they were going to get in an election put all their money into this, and the mammals underneath said, nah, not listening to that story.
That's right.
And who are they listening to? They're listening to old people like me and you and stuff. So elders, why? Because back there we caught the bug, we saw it, but you couldn't get it out in the daylight because of the dinosaurs trying to keep that light from coming up.
Indeed.
And now it's coming up, and people, and it has to.
Yep.
So it's real exciting.
That is an awesome way of looking at human history in light of it's a recapitulation.
It's a fractal image. It all has to be.
It is a fractal image.
Nature is fractal, so it's implied, and that's why it's so much fun. Because if you say then a nice question, which you started with, and I detoured to get to, but the question was, what do you do now? What do we do now? And I say, you know what's interesting? It's a fractal story. Why is that interesting? Because we mentioned this before. When you're healthy and you're happy, 50 trillion citizens are working in harmony and sharing all of that happiness. And you say, well, how do they do it? And I say, that's the fractal part. If you want to know how to make the civilization successful, then look at the lower level of how 50 trillion cells in a civilization create a healthy human. And you say, why is that important? Because then I go back and say, fractally, here's what's important. Every cell has a job. Every cell gets paid a currency.
Employed.
Every cell is given health care. Every cell is given protection. They all work together in harmony. There's no unemployment in the system. And guess what? When it prospers, it's unbelievable. And there's a social structure and a political structure. There's a government. There's a mind.
That's right.
And there's a population of 50 trillion cells that when your mind is not operating right, the 50 trillion voting cells can knock your ass out from underneath.
You know, this is so beautiful, Bruce. It's so true. And, you know, from a psychological point of view, everything that you just outlined can help people feel very empowered because people say, what can I do? What can I do? And what goes with that phrase, the implication is, I'm so small. I'm just one little person. What difference can a small person like me make? Well, you just made it very clear, abundantly clear, what one person actually consists of when you take in the true holistic nature of the universe, which is from bacteria on up. And we are, in fact, the governor, if you will, the president of a community of 50 trillion.
And you just have to look at the health of your community to see how your leadership is progressing.
Exactly.
That's basically, to own the responsibility that I am influencing the lives of these 50 trillion cells. If I'm doing it right, if I have good driver education,
that's right.
if I handle the vehicle right, then I'm going to have, 50 trillion happy, healthy cells in the process.
That's right.
And if I'm not doing it right, then part of my population is going to show me where the problem is, because it's going to become dysfunctional. And the dysfunction, which which are the diagnoses of the doctors when you have symptoms, those are dysfunctions. We blame there's some those cells are bad or something like that. It's like no, it's the boss and the organizing that has failed the system.
The communications haven't been correct. The words, the perceptions are not feeding the cells correctly, and the governor may also be making less than valuable nutritional choices, or stress management choices, or rest choices, or love choices.
That's driver education.
That's driver education.
And we don't
exactly.
And it's programmed by others. I want people to understand this because we didn't. I talked about it, but I need them to understand it because. And I
also want to go back to the sixth mass extinction as well.
Oh yeah, but this is the key to the evolution right here, and the key is is that we are running our biology with our mind, given.
Yes.
There are two minds. The conscious mind is a interdependent element with a subconscious mind, meaning they both work together, but they're not the same thing. They're individual elements, okay?
Yes.
Point. The conscious mind is the latest edition of the human neurological system.
That's right.
It's the little
the prefrontal cortex.
What's that? Prefrontal cortex right behind your head there. The rest of the brain was there before, essentially. So the rest of the brain essentially represents the subconscious. It was there before the conscious. I said that the differences between the two is this. The conscious is where your uniqueness comes from, your personal identity, your source, your spirit, your connection. That's the conscious mind. That's what makes individuals different from each other. The conscious mind, and here, a couple of facts about it, because when we put them all together, it's like the big aha comes, I hope. Conscious mind is also the creative mind, meaning, Mitchell, what are you doing next week? If you actually can come up with an answer, then by definition, you're creating a future. That's by definition, okay? So it's creative.
Right. Defining a future.
Number one. And number two, and this is very critical, it's going to come back to haunt us here, the conscious mind's not time-bound. Because, as I just said, what are you doing next week? And then your mind moves into next week. And I could have easily said, what did you do last Wednesday? And your mind will go into the past. Or I could say, solve this math problem in your head, and your conscious mind will disappear upstairs somewhere. What's the point? The conscious mind doesn't have to pay attention. It could be thinking in the future, thinking in the past, disconnecting with a daydream. And I say, well, that's interesting. If the conscious mind's not paying attention, then who's running the show? And the answer is, well, that's the job of the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind has the programs in it. Once you learn a program, it's sort of like a jukebox. You push the button, and it plays that track all the time. Every time you push it, it's going to play the same track over and over again. Yeah. The programming occurs before age 7, and predominantly that programming, especially after birth through 7, is a result of our brain functioning being in a lower EEG state called theta. As a child develops, it's in theta for about the first 6 or 7 years of its life, and then after that, it's predominantly in alpha.
Is it really that long? Is it really that long? That's
the predominant state, meaning it may have other states in between, let's say alpha, which is calm consciousness, a higher vibration. But it doesn't maintain it as much as theta, and theta is hypnosis.
Predominantly it's theta, you're saying.
And that's hypnosis. So basically said, the fundamental programs in your life were put in there in the first 7 years primarily by hypnosis, meaning you didn't have to study it, you didn't have to learn it, you didn't have to work at it. All you had to do was observe it, and it recorded. Okay?
So-called hypnosis osmosis.
Yeah, and that's it. So basically it says the fundamental programs in your subconscious, which is a habit mind. That's what it is. It does habits.
Yes.
You learn how to walk. You don't have to learn how to walk every day. You don't even have to think about walking. All you have to.
That's right.
I'm going to go get something upstairs. It automatically is going to go upstairs. So
it's referred to as second nature. Second nature.
Subconscious minds. A lot of people think it's evil. It's like, no, man, it's really great because it allows you to do a lot of chores without
thinking. Automate it.
Yeah. So it's just if you've got bad programs in it, then it's a bad subconscious mind. But it's not the mind. It's just the program. So so we have these two minds. One works on habits, and the fundamental habits are actually acquired by observing parents, family, community, culture in the first 7 years, downloadable because the brain was in a record state of theta. Okay, and this becomes very critical because the conscious mind's not even involved with the program. All it's doing is reading somebody else's program and downloading it. Okay, so now we have the two minds. So the conscious mind's your creative one with your wishes and your desires and your aspirations, and that's the fun mind. They say, "What do you want, Mitchell? Tell me what you want," and the answer will come from that conscious mind that has your wishes and desires in it. And so we have habits and wishes and desires, and here's the problem. Because the conscious mind is not time-bound, it can go in the future, past, disconnect, then it means when the conscious mind's not being present, the brain automatically defaults to the subconscious habits. The significance about that is when you're in your conscious mind, you're controlling with your wishes and desires all your activities, behavior, cognitive, all that.
Yes.
When your mind's not paying attention because it's traveling, then it shifts to the default, which is the habit programs that are stored in the subconscious mind, with the knowledge, of course, that most of those habits are acquired from other people, not even you,
correct.
Your parents and all that.
Like parents.
Okay, so here's the issue. 5%, we brought up the number before, 5% of the time we operate from the conscious mind, 95% from the subconscious mind. The reason is simple, is because we spend our day thinking a lot. Every time we're thinking, by definition, we unconsciously shift to the default. Well, here's where the problem comes from. When you're playing the subconscious programs, which are not yours,
right.
most of the time you're totally unaware of it. You don't see it. Why? Because your conscious mind's not paying attention. That's why it doesn't see what's playing. That's why it's playing a habit. Your conscious mind's not even there. And then
like a background tune.
And it's automatic, and you don't see it. I give this in a lecture, and everybody laughs because they're so familiar with it. But it's like, again, another profound story. And it's simply this. I say, you go back, I know sometime in the past you were close with a friend, you knew your friend's behavior very, very well, and you happen to know your friend's parent. And at one point you may have seen that your friend had some of the same behavior of their parent, and you would have volunteered something very casual like, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And you back away from Bill, who goes ballistic. How can you compare me to my dad?
How can you say that?
Right. So everyone laughs. Yeah. They're all familiar with it. And I say, well, there's two profound points. Same story. Very profound. Number one, everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. Why? Right. Because when he's playing those programs, it's because his mind's not paying attention. He's playing the automatic tape. Okay?
He's unconscious.
And then I go, and then profound point two, which is very critical, is that we are all Bill. Every one of us is 95% of the day playing subconscious programs. Well, the issue about that is if the programs that were put in the subconscious are not yours, then in a sense of your intention, desires, wishes, and what you want, then it means 95% of the time you're playing programs that will sabotage everything you want, and you yourself will not see it, like Bill.
Yeah.
Why is that relevant? Well, if you're the one inside your body looking out through your eyes saying, I want to be healthy, wealthy, happy, prosperous, whatever, these are things my wishes and desires conscious mind have. I go out at the house in the morning, I go through my whole day, and I come home realizing, God, what a tough time I'm having, getting toward my wishes and desires. And then I'm left with one thought, was, well, I went out there to be successful, and it didn't work, so the universe is against me. It's not in my fate to have that. It's not in my cards. And then it turns out, okay, wait. Only 5% of that time were you actually going in the direction you wanted to go. 95% of the time you were playing those programs that other people put in you, which are almost, psychologists tell us, most of them are limiting, self-sabotaging, disempowering beliefs about life. And
Indeed.
So 95% of the time we're sabotaging ourselves. We don't see it. Blame the world. And then look at our lives as victims of something gone out of control. And when we understand this, it becomes so important because, as we said, we brought up the matrix. I said, what happens if you didn't play those subconscious patterns, but you actually stayed with your hands on the steering wheel and drove it exactly where you wanted to go? I said, well, you did that, and it was called the honeymoon. Okay, so we already know you did that. Okay, and so basically it says, we have to be conscious of our unconscious. That's the limiting thing. Here's a joke, too, because it irritates me. It's an irritational joke. This information is not new. The science of the understanding is new. Yes. The Jesuits, for 500 years, would boast. This is what part they would boast. They would say, give me a child until it's 6 or 7. It will belong to the church for the rest of its life. Or more biblically, they would say, give me a child and I will show you the man. They knew for 500 years, if I get the education in the first 6 or 7 years, I don't care what their conscious and wishes and desires, whatever they want.
They don't stand a chance.
No, that subconscious programming I'm giving them will play 95% of the time, and they will be that.
That's right. Exactly.
And then I tell people after that story, and I go, so you think a little minor fact about life like that just slipped by in time? It's like, are you kidding me?
Right.
They know that more now than ever before, and know how to do it more effectively than ever before.
That's right. First of all, Freud is a latter-day reiterator of these points and further finessed the understanding, as did Jung and Adler and Reich. But it was, as you well put it, back in the time of the Jesuits. And if you want to go a step further, the Abhidharma from ancient India is all about this ancient text, the Vedic text, about the psychology of perception. And they understood how the environment controls the inner mechanisms of experience.
I would love that reference, Mitchell. That would be great.
Yeah, sure.
I'll get that from you because that's a very important piece of this puzzle because this is not, this is ancient knowledge. I don't know how far back, but this is ancient knowledge of programming. This allows very few people to manage and control millions of people.
Exactly. I'm forgetting right now, Bruce, Freud's cousin, but he was credited with the beginning of public relations back in the 20s or 30s. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
Was the trouble. He was the. I remember that guy.
Yes, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes,
exactly.
Look, and I just all of a sudden lost a neuron where his name is.
Right, I lost that same one.
He advised the government and did a lot of advertising and showed how to control people with advertising,
Exactly, and that was the beginning of that conscious use. You could say the conscious use of the subconscious, and how to deliberately manipulate. So in this case, for profit and for economic gain. And, of course, it was then utilized later for political purposes as well, oppressive ways to use it.
Currently as well.
That's right.
And what's interesting, though, is that the younger millennial generation, what's really interesting about that is their parents, which were, more from the later hippie versions, right?
Yes.